Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. Quite literally, it was just yesterday when we did a show reacting to a story surrounding LeBron James in a letter that was essentially sent to the Chinese press. Now, as you guys know, LeBron was making, I don't know if he's still doing it, making his China tour press run out there in China. And essentially there was a report where they were saying that he wrote a letter to the press and people were reacting to him. Now, LeBron James doesn't have a history with China, which dates back all the way to his comments on Daryl Morey. As you guys remember, Daryl Morey put out the tweet a number of years ago where he said we stand with China and all of that, and we stand with the people for not being oppressed and all of that. And LeBron James essentially went out there and scolded him for his views, and was like, what he said was essentially irresponsible, and he ought to know better than go out there and making those comments. So for those of you who don't remember what LeBron had to say initially about Morey, take a listen to his comments here.
I felt like with this particular situation, it was something not only was I not informed enough about. I just felt like it was something that not only myself or my teammates or our organization had enough information to even talk about it at that point in time, and we still feel the same way.
How do you think the league handled the situation overall?
I'm not sure. I'm not here to judge how the league handled the situation. I just think that, when you're misinformed or you're not educated about something, and I'm just talking about, the tweet itself, you never know the ramifications that can happen. We all seen what that did. Not only did for our league, but for all of us in America, for people in China as well. And sometimes you have to think through things that you say that may cause harm, not only for yourself, but for the majority of people. And I think that's just a prime example of that. I'll give you a one-on-one exclusive because you're my guy.
LeBron, there was a report that you guys met with Adam while you were in China. Did you feel like he was receptive to what you guys had to say when you guys met?
I think Adam has always been receptive about what the players and the coaches and the owners or whoever kind of have comments about our league. And at that particular time, I thought he was very receptive as well. It's a tough situation for Adam as well, having to put out such a fire that he didn't create, that he didn't start. I believe, it was great for him to come, from Tokyo to come to Shanghai, and for him to have a meeting with us and for us to have our opinions and what we felt was best going forward, not only for Adam and the league, but for all of us.
Would you go back if the league asked the Lakers to go back? Would you want to go back?
I've always, for me personally, like I said, I've always been welcome with open arms. I've been to China probably over 15 to 20 times. And the main reason I've always wanted to go back to China is because of the game of basketball. The game of basketball has brought people together in so many different facets, so many different countries, different people that you would never, ever expect. And that's always been my goal, going over to China, to be able to have the game that we all cover, this beautiful game of basketball that we all love and talk about every single day, to be able to bring people together in such the most positive way. And that's what we're there as well this past trip. Myself and the Lakers along with Brooklyn, we were there to continue to promote the game of basketball, because the game of basketball is all over the world, not only in China, but in India and Africa and America and so on and so on. And that's what I will continue to do, because this sport has done so much for me.
Great. So you heard what LeBron had to say there. So we were talking about that. We did a show reacting to it. I said that the reason that LeBron said that was essentially because he was trying to protect his interests. Similarly to the time when Kyrie Irving got in trouble for those tweets, and Kyrie was being viewed as an anti-Semite, LeBron, unprovoked, stepped out there and said, you got to be careful about the things you say and this and that. I'm sitting there what did Kyrie Irving say? Well, LeBron, again, was protecting his interests there as well. So this afternoon, an article came across our desk from Front Office Sports. Not from Front Office Sports. An article came across our desk from fadeawayworld.net, right? And it had something to do with some comments that Jaylen Brown made. And the article essentially says this: Jaylen Brown reveals he rejected Nike's $50 million deal to not compromise his voice and his freedom. And I'm like, this is interesting. Given the show we just produced yesterday. Let's get into what this article had to say. I think you guys are going to find it interesting. Boston Celtics superstar Jaylen Brown is known for being a leader both on and off the court. The 28-year-old is an outspoken individual. While this is admirable, it has been a trait that brands find particularly challenging to manage. Brown's stances against signing deals with large brands is well known, especially with his publicized ongoing feud with Nike. Recently, however, the Celtics star revealed why he rejected a $50 million deal with the apparel giant to start his own brand, the Big Trigger, on the Big Trigger Morning Show. He said, listen to this. You sign these contracts. You have these little catchphrases that be in there. Like if you say anything controversial or anything that disrupts our ecosystem of our company, we can terminate your deal, terminate your contract. So that kind of makes you not have a voice. So a lot of our celebrities and athletes, they never speak up. They never say anything because they risk whatever their contracts, whatever their contracts is if they do. So I don't like compromising my voice for nothing and nobody. So I just told them I'd pass. I don't think people really understand the gravitas of his comments. People don't get it. Let me juxtapose Jaylen Brown with somebody else that we used to talk about a lot on this channel, Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers are under heavy investigation for Kawhi essentially accepting money under the table to do nothing to circumvent the NBA salary cap. Kawhi was essentially alleged to what the Pablo Torre bending the rules, all to gain money, all in the name of money. That is all it was for. Nothing more, nothing less. Then you have an individual like this saying, you can keep your money. Keep your money, I'll keep my voice. Now, why are we mentioning LeBron James, apart from the fact that we played the audio on China? Because LeBron picks and chooses. LeBron fashions himself as a social civil rights activist. But on some issues, he's mute. And then on other issues, he's he's outspoken about it. And some of us are like, well, wait a minute. If you stand for justice, if you stand for fairness, why aren't you like this across the board? People are calling out the hypocrisy. They're calling it out. And for somebody like Jaylen Brown to say, keep your money, I'll figure things out on my own, it's admirable. Because most people ain't going to do that. Most people are going to run and grab the bag as fast as they can without thinking twice. This is why that whole Stephen A. Smith said brands are not, they're going to penalize him and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. That's what he was talking about. They're talking about this guy because the guy wants to keep his voice and say what he believes. And therefore, people are shying away from him. So what does that make you think about all the other people that have all these deals? Something that makes you think, huh? So the NBA is about to kick off in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Very soon, we're going to be having media day. And then from that, training camp. And then before you know it, preseason. And then the NBA season. And there's a lot of things going on this new season. Obviously, with the NBA now signing up to basically partnering up with a lot of these streaming companies to be carrying some of their games. We have that as well. And we also have the TNT crew joining ESPN. Now, over the last few months, we've kind of chronicled this story, talked about some of the things that Kenny Smith has said, Shaq has said, Charles Barkley has said, and the overarching message has been, these guys don't really know what to expect coming down the turnpike. Now, if you know anything about Inside the NBA, it's a very long show, and really where the magic happens is usually during the halftime, but especially in the post-game show, where guys can just kind of let it fly, be themselves, and give you their unadulterated views on things. But now these guys come into ESPN, things are beginning to change. But the problem is some of them don't know what change is awaiting them. So this morning I was going through the internet here, and I came across an interview that Charles Barkley did. This interview was published, let me see, a day ago on the Smile Show, right? It was about an hour and 17 minute interview. And it said Charles Barkley on Ryder Cup trash talk, plus Rory's bulletin board material and all of that. So apparently they got to a point where they were talking about Charles Barkley's career on TV, his 25 plus year career on TV. And they were talking about his upcoming partnership with ESPN. And once again, Charles Barkley is calling out the network over their lack of communication going into next season. So for those of you who didn't hear the comments that Barkley had to make, want to play his comments for you now and then come back and react to what he had to say. Take a listen to Charles here.
And you see ESPN, on the bottom ticker. Is that going to be something that's going to be different for you? Because, you had to have a lot of pride with your show being on TNT for so many years. And I'm sure that there was times where you'd look at the opponents, their post-game shows over at ESPN and thinking, man, they can't hold a candle to what we can do. And now all of a sudden you got ESPN on your bottom ticker of your show.
Yeah, there is some trepidation and nervousness for several reasons. Number one, it's going to be totally new, but and there's been a really lack of communications from everybody because I don't think nobody know what's going to happen, to be honest. So, the best part of our show is like that 45 minutes to an hour we get to go crazy after the game. That's the best part of our show. Our question, which we haven't got an answer for, is do we have to go right to Sports Center? Or when we on ABC, do we go right to local? Those are two important questions that we actually getting together in about 2 weeks and going to finally sit down with ESPN face to face and says, hey, can y'all tell us how this thing is going to work? Because I've talked to some of their people. They're like, sometimes we get like 3 minutes. They're like, we got to go local. We got to go to the local affiliate. So that's it. You got 2 to 3 minutes. I'm like, we can't even discuss what happened in the game in 2 to 3 minutes. We're stuck. Or they're like, you got 7 minutes or 10 minutes, then you got to go to Sports Center. To me, that would really hurt our show because you can't really tell what happened in a game in 2 or 3 minutes. Like I like to explain what happened, but good coaching. I think the coach made a mistake. The player made a mistake here. And so it's all going to be new. But to answer your question, yeah, it's going to be weird. But the weirdest thing is like, yo, man, do we have to go right to local news right now? Or do we have to go right to Sports Center? How much time do we have after the game to actually talk basketball? Because that's when we had some of our best communications. But we don't know. Well, like I said, we're going to get together. I think it's the 24th. They sent us out a mass email, say, hey, can you guys be in Atlanta? ESPN is going to come down and want to explain everything. I'm so sure, let's do it.
Did you consider retiring
I
through
did.
all this? You did.
Well, I did for a couple reasons. The reason I didn't retire, we got to keep everybody hired. The last year really sucked for me, Smiley, to be honest with you, because, I've always lived in a fantasy world where I've been around rich jocks and my friends. But to be around people who talk about their mortgage, having their kids have to switch schools, it was really painful because, I've known these people for 25 years and we never thought we were going to lose the NBA. But to be around my friends and having them say, yo, I got to find a job because I got to worry about my mortgage. I'm about to send my kids to a different school. That was really painful for me and Ernie, Kenny, and Shaq because we would have been fine. So in my mind, I had decided to I don't know if I want to do this. And me and Ernie are always stepping together. And then when this opportunity came up, because I met with NBC and Amazon And even if I went to one of those networks, I would have a whole new team more than likely. So I was concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, this thing with ESPN came up, and I was like, wait a minute, we can keep 200 people jobs who I really like and admire. Let's do it.
So you heard what he had to say. Folks, it's September. We're going towards the middle of September. And they still don't know what to expect. Now, he did say they're supposed to be having meetings in the next 2 weeks. But man, it's pretty late in the game. That's the first thing. The second thing, if you listen carefully to what he said, he spoke about what I mentioned at the top of the show, which was the end of the post-game show. How's that going to work? Are they only going to have 15 minutes to give you their thoughts and then cut over to SportsCenter? Is that how it's going to work? I'm also hearing from other sources that this show is not even going to be a weekly show. They may come on once, like at the beginning of the season. Then the next time you may see them is on Christmas Day. And I'm like, what's going on here? Now, what I do like is the reasons why Charles is motivated to keep this thing going, which is because of the 200 staff members that are connected to that show. 200 staff members? That means this show must be making hundreds of millions of dollars a year. To pay a staff of 200? 200 people? If they were paying these people, and of course you have Charles and all of these guys. So let's remove the top front facing talent. Let's move the executives. Let's say the top 190 people. Let's say you're paying 190 people an average salary of $5,000. That means your overhead just on those people is $95,000 a month. That's at That's at 5,000, right? Then you have Charles and all of those guys, and let's assume the average is high. These guys, this is a very expensive show. But anyway, back to what he said about them wanting to ensure that they kept people's jobs. I think that's a noble thing to do. But it still doesn't change from the fact that this thing still seems very confusing. And my opinion is this. I think that Charles is probably just doing this, obviously to get a check, but also to ensure that these people have a job. And that's about it. I don't think he is. I think there's a level of motivation there, but I also think there's a level of skepticism based on the fact that they still don't understand what's going on. And he's not the only one that said this. Shaq has said as much. We've done shows reacting to what Shaq had to say, and Shaq himself has said, I don't know what to expect. He isn't the only one. Kenny Smith said the same thing. But if it's supposed to be this thing where they're only going to be reacting to games for 15 minutes, I don't know how interested I would be in watching something like that. Now, I'm going to watch to see if it works and how they pull it off. But I guess we have to see. People like Bill Simmons are worried that they feel like ESPN is going to screw up the show. Only time will tell. Y'all know the NBA season is about to be kicking off in about a month or so. They're going to be starting the season a little bit earlier this year, right? Training camp, media day, all of that will be starting not too long from now. And, with every season, there are going to be storylines and things are going to happen and what we can look forward to and all of that. But things are going to be distinctively different this season. Why? Because you guys know the NBA just recently inked a new deal worth $77 billion, I think, over the next 10 or 11 years with various streaming platforms, networks like ESPN, Amazon, etc. And essentially what these new contracts mean is that now for you to be able to watch these games, you have to be subscribed to a plethora of platforms. Now, me currently being outside the States, I usually watch all the games on League Pass. I think I pay like $120 per season, but we're going to see how that's going to work out this season. But anyway, people have been complaining about this, right? Because they're like, how do you expect NBA fans to sign up to all of these different platforms just to watch your games? Because the NBA is portioning off some of its key games on these various platforms. So people were talking about it. People were complaining about it. So yesterday, Adam Silver held a press conference where he spoke about the issues surrounding the Clippers and all of that. He essentially said it was the burden of proof was on the NBA to prove that these guys were doing something wrong. He spoke about some other things. But then a reporter asked him about fans not being able to gain access to some of these games, right? And them essentially just locking out a lot of people that don't have the disposable income to pay for all of these various platforms. And let me tell you something. Adam Silver's response was mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. So for those of you who didn't hear what the commissioner had to say, I want to play his comments for you now. And then we're going to continue on with the show. Take a listen to what Adam Silver had to say there.
There's a huge amount of our content that people can essentially consume for free. I mean, this is very much a highlights-based sport, so, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you name it, any service, the New York Times for that matter, to the extent that your content is not behind a paid firewall. There's an enormous amount of content out there. YouTube, by another example, that is advertising-based that consumers can consume.
So you heard what he said. He said that for those people that are complaining about the fact that they're not going to be able to see any games, there are a lot of highlights out there. Go on TikTok, go on YouTube, go on Instagram, and go to wherever else you may see highlights, and that's where you can get your highlights. That there's so much content out there. I thought that was crazy. Like, that was a crazy thing to say. It was just a crazy, crazy thing to say. And I'm not the only one that think this is an issue. Even Charles Barkley last week, when he was on The Ringer talking to Bill Simmons brought up this very issue. And Charles Barkley said then that he believes the NBA is making a mistake by doing this. Take a listen to Charles Barkley here.
I think the NBA's got a big problem. How are regular fans gonna okay, it's Tuesday, especially when they start putting games on.
Where do I go?
Well, because, sometimes the game's going to be on Peacock. And, it's not going to be on NBC. I think that's a huge dilemma for the NBA.
Guess what? They don't care.
I
agree. They got
took
so
the
much money. They're going to wipe their tears with cash.
Bill, I'm so glad you said that. I think it's a big deal because they just took all the money from all three networks. I don't think they give a about the fans. And I think this is going to come back to bite them, to be honest with you. And then the thing that's scary, this deal is for 11 years.
Right.
So now people can complain all they want to. For the next 11 years, they don't give a about the fans. They're like, y'all, if y'all find the games, fine. Just make sure the check clears.
So you heard what Barkley said. Do you know who else said that this is an issue? Mark Cuban. We recently did a show where we were reacting to some comments that Cuban made. He believes that they're making a mistake. So the commissioner is saying, if you feel left out, if you feel you can't gain access to these games, just go watch the highlights. Let me tell y'all something. That's crazy. Now, let me tell you guys how I interact with highlights. For games that I don't watch, I usually watch the highlights on YouTube. But I'm not somebody that watches those 12-minute highlights where they're giving you essentially play-by-play every bucket that took place in a game from beginning to end. I don't have time for that. I don't watch those highlights. The highlights I usually watch are from Motion Station. Motion Station is a channel, they must be owned by the NBA, where they put together these 2.5-minute highlights that has a storyline that kind of tells you what happened, what a so-and-so player did, whereas those other clips, they just basically cut and play-by-play clips together. And those clips are quicker because it gives me a quick summary of what happened in the game. So I usually watch those clips instead. Instagram Reels, you're not watching it for highlights. You're watching it. Instagram, you're not watching it for highlights. You're watching it for specific plays, like if a dunk or a crossover. That's really what Instagram is for. You're not going there to watch full-blown highlights the way the commissioner's talking about it. So that's how I consume content. Obviously, other people like the longer form content. They watch that as well. But here's the problem with highlights. And Too Raw for TV brought this up this afternoon, which was they don't tell you the actual story. You can watch highlights and it doesn't give you the full picture of what happened in a game. It doesn't. And highlights can tell you any story you want to see. You could have a player that played like ass the entire game and show like 3 highlights of him and you think this guy was the biggest deal. Like, highlights don't really capture it all and they don't really tell the story. But the commissioner is essentially saying, if you can't make it, you're priced out. You're priced out. And they are banking on these platforms, the fact that people are going to be signing up That's where they're aiming to get their money. And it really indicates how the world is changing. All right. This isn't the world that we used to know. Things are changing. Life is becoming more expensive with every passing day. And very soon, these things that used to be kind of just standard things in our lives are going to just end up being luxuries. Now, watching an NBA game is going to become a luxury in the future. That's essentially what is happening. I'm sure the NBA has crunched their numbers. They've hedged their bets. I assume they understand who their customer base is going to be and the people are going to be paying this amount of money to watch these games across these platforms. We'll sign up, but I'm not paying out of my pocket. We'll cut it as an expense to what we're doing, and I'll just mark it off that way. Right? But to be signed up to all of these things, and people have bills to pay, other stuff to pay, internet to pay, all of this light, gas, and all that, you expect them to just be shelling out all of this extra money just to watch NBA games? It sounds a little bit unfair, right? It sounds a little bit unfair to a customer base that has been there for decades. You know, your man LeBron James is the king of antics, right? He is the king of antics. And I used to have LeBron in my top 5 all time. He was in my top 4. But over time, man, his antics just made me remove him out of him. I couldn't do it no more. The antics became too much for me to handle. And it seems like, apparently, I'm not the only one that feels this way. Apparently, even NBA players secretly dislike LeBron James because of his antics and the stuff that he does. We came across an article this morning from Basketball Network. Here's the headline. Some people don't like him because he named himself the king. Ex-NBA player believes LeBron receives hatred for praising himself. Let me read that last part. Ex-player believes LeBron James receives hatred for praising himself. Folks, we need to get into this story. Let's continue on. Lester Connor reveals the 2 reasons why James faces relentless criticism. There's no denying that the criticism surrounding LeBron has only grown louder as he extends his career, becoming more relentless and staggering with each passing season. Even though there's an acknowledgement about him being a once-in-a-lifetime athlete, some fans still constantly compare James to past superstars to downplay his credentials. According to ex-NBA big man Lester Connor, the persistent criticism stems from 2 primary reasons. Regardless of how differently LeBron operates in his remaining time, it is impossible for him to change the perception of those fans. Connor on why James is unabashedly criticized. While it is true that LeBron has lost as many NBA finals as Jordan has won, one should also take into consideration how the Lakers' superstar has a superior statistical data. James sits atop the NBA's all-time scoring list with 42,000 plus points, while also ranking 4th in assists and 5th in triple-doubles with 122 against his name. These numbers alone reflect a high level of all-around dominance that surpasses MJ in certain respects. Moreover, even in his 23rd campaign, James is still expected to lead a high-profile franchise like the Lakers to their 18th championship, which underscores the extraordinary weight of expectations he continues to carry, something Jordan never faced during his latter years. For Connor, however, the real issue lies not in James's achievements, but in his self-promotion. The 21-time All-Star doesn't shy away from boasting about his game acumen, and has openly acknowledged himself as the GOAT, a stance that contrasts sharply with Jordan, who consistently refused to make such claims during his prime days. This tendency, Lester argues, rubs people the wrong way. Additionally, the reality of LeBron joining forces with Wade in Miami, Kyrie Irving in Cleveland, and Anthony Davis in LA has fueled resentment. According to Connor, many struggle to accept that a player can exercise such control while still being a player, which fundamentally alters the traditional narrative. Here are his comments. Some people don't like him because of the fact that he named himself the king. Who gonna name themselves the king and then say they're the GOAT and then the greatest of all time when somebody else should give you those accolades. So I think that's one of them, Connor said during his appearance on Cedric Macro's podcast. Then there's the way he does teams by handpicking certain guys that he wants, being the player, the general manager, the coach. I think that rubs some people in the wrong way. Now, let me read this last part of this article. He says, what is wrong with LeBron's approach? In reality, James has managed his career on his own terms without engaging in questionable practices. Is whoever wrote this article, are you high? You must be high or you must be drunk off of jars of honey. Let me keep reading. He has carefully assessed which teammates best complement his skill set and structured his career around maximizing both individual success and team potential. More importantly, LeBron has done so without breaching contracts or forcing his way out of unfavorable situations. On the other hand, as far as LeBron gathering praise for himself is concerned, in today's NBA, where guys are constantly subjected to harsh scrutiny, there seems little wrong with legitimizing his own case for the GOAT title, especially when considering the magnitude of his contributions to the game and the business of basketball as a global icon. However, as Connor noted, not everyone is willing to embrace this new era of player. Okay, this dude is drunken. You know, you're the drunken monkey, the drunken honey. This dude, whoever wrote that article, bro, put the jar down, bro. Put it down. What are my thoughts about this? He hit the nail on the head. That turns people off. When you go around and tell yourself, you know, I'm this, I'm that. Even in a beautiful woman, it's annoying. You've seen some beautiful women. Oh, I'm just so beautiful. I know I'm so beautiful, right? I know. It's like, okay, please, like, stop. Like, it's becoming obnoxious now. Stop. But that's one of the things people don't like. But beyond the fact that he calls himself the GOAT, I think the number one reason why people have an issue with it is because he doesn't have a case to be the GOAT. If MJ came out and said one day I'm the GOAT, not many people would argue him. Not many people are arguing. The other thing worth saying is this. Whenever you feel the need to go around and constantly praise yourself, you know there's some serious insecurities that are there. There are a lot of underlying insecurities. So for you to constantly say that, it means that some part of you don't believe it. Hence the reason you keep saying it. Because if you believe it, or rather if you know it, what's the purpose of you constantly trying to shove that idea down people's throat? It's one of the reasons after he won his 4th championship, LeBron James said, and I want my damn respect. That's what he said. Well, 20 years in or whatever it was at the time, 4th championship, and you feel people don't respect you? No, it's not that you feel people don't respect. You know people don't respect you. Hence the reason you have to keep saying it. The thing is, and the thing that this writer is missing in all of this, you feel like if I keep saying it, I'm going to convince people. No, you're not. You're not convincing people. You're trying to convince yourself. That's the problem. You're not convincing me. You're trying to convince yourself. And the fact of the matter is nobody likes a show off and somebody that does that. It's par for the course. So you seem to be very tone deaf. If you wrote at the end of the article, and this is the reason why I'm one of the best writers out there, bro, knock it off. Knock it off. People stop reading your articles. So there seems to be a level of just cluelessness and a lack of self-awareness that exists with the guy. That's the reason why you can do a commercial like the last commercial, and nobody in the room said, bro, this is weird. This is a little bit much, don't you think? Therein lies the reason.